What's good, y'all? Hope everybody is well. Was about to do a pre-recorded, and I said, you know what? Let me just pop up here and drop this real quick. So I hope everybody's well. What's up, Malika? Prince? What's going on? Mr. Meach? AB? What's good, y'all? Brian? Hassam? You know, Ed? What's happening? Hybrid Ninja? I just wanted to drop a real quick, little hit just to kind of cover something. What's up, brother Mawada? Something that was on my mind having to do with a piece that I ran across. And this is a piece you can find on businessinsider.com. And it basically has to do with, the state of Black men in regard to employment, particularly during this moment. So I just thought I'd drop in a quick hit real quick. So we can kind of look at this. I know this is not my usual time, but there's so much going on. I said, let me go ahead and drop this real quick. What's good, y'all? Please hit the like button. Much appreciated, Hybrid Ninja. And share, support the channel, like, share, subscribe, donate, all that good stuff. Let me see. So let's just jump into this real quick. Now is that, you know what? I'm curious because I can't tell what you guys see, and I'm going live in a different way than I have before, so I'm not sure how it comes across to you guys. Hold on. How it comes across. Okay, no, that's cool. All right. So put that down. All right. Damn it. Oh, this is doing way too much. All right. It straight disappeared. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. Hold on. I'm having to get to know my screen in a whole different way, so I apologize. It's just moving a little differently. Okay, I see it. All right. So anyway, this is a piece that you can find in businessinsider.com entitled Companies Still Aren't Hiring Black Men Despite 10.6 million open jobs in the US. It's costing the economy $50 billion. Right? Billion with a B. Straight up. All right. What's up, Micah? What's happening? Brian, what's going on? Jonathan, TD. So different. Looks like we got a full house. Good to see you guys in here. Remember, like the video, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. So, let's go through this together a little bit and see what we're looking at. For those of you that didn't see it, this came out January 5th of this year. So I was going to do it earlier, but I thought, something else I ran across made me just really want to revisit this. So let's just jump in. So it says, despite a nationwide cry for workers, businesses aren't hiring Black men, and it's costing the country billions of dollars, according to a new study by the Center for Economic and Policy Research. Right, the unemployment rate for Black men remains high, 7.3% in November, compared to 3.4% among white men looking for work, according to the Labor Department data. Roughly 697,000 Black men need employment, even as the country recorded 10.6 million vacant jobs in November. And don't forget, I've been saying this for years now, leading up to the pandemic. We know in over the 30 major cities, I think it's over 45 major cities, Black male unemployment was up between 40 and 50%. Right. So that's going into the pandemic. According to this, we have nearly 700,000 Black men unemployed and yet still can't get jobs despite millions available. Right. According to the CEPR study, Black men are excluded from the workforce due to racist hiring practices, as well as being killed and imprisoned at higher rates than other groups. This doesn't just hurt Black men and their families and communities. CEPR estimates that the lost income from racial discrimination costs the overall US economy about $50 billion a year. By focusing on closing the black-white jobs gap, we could add about 30 billion annually to Black communities and make a significant reduction in Black poverty, writes Algernon Austin, the author of the CEPR study. Right? So we're talking about a situation where not only is there unemployment, not only are there barriers that prevent people from wanting to actually hire Black folk, but they're willing to push this across despite the impact it has on the economy. You know, what's up, Ron? Um, let's see. BGS, I don't know what you're trying to say. Oh. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, yeah, drop me a word, BGS, if you're trying to warn me of something. Otherwise, it didn't come through. Anyway, the figure jumps to 50 billion when factoring in Black men of prime working age who die or are incarcerated. For that reason, as Austin told Insider, the unemployment rate is only part of the picture since it only captures people who are currently looking for work. The joblessness rate, or those who aren't working at all, is typically 3 times larger, right? 3 times larger. Let's see. Shout out to Kyle808. Appreciate that cash out. Right. So, since we typically focus on the unemployment rate, we are missing the full impact of joblessness for Black men, said Austin. For Black men, there is never a period of low unemployment. This is true. It remains pretty constant and pretty high. And for some reason, by the time we hit the pandemic, people want to imagine that somehow it didn't impact Black men at all. Matter of fact, you're kind of lucky to find any article or piece that kind of covers what Black men are grappling with during the midst of all of this. It's interesting, the obliviousness that I tend to notice when it comes to reports about the state of various demographics, right? It says the unemployment rate for Black men has never been low, Austin says. It would be more correct to characterize it as high, very high, or extremely high. While employers are calling the current labor conditions in the US a shortage as they struggle to hire, Black men of working age continue to have the highest unemployment rate of any gender or race. Isn't it interesting when we hear about intersectionality, it never seems to apply to Black men, right? Never seems to really apply to Black men, right? But nevertheless, when you look at how race, gender intersect, or race and gender intersect, and I can even add heterosexuality because there's another report that I might actually pull up. Matter of fact, I think I will. It kind of lets us know. This was a piece I ran across a few years ago and lost track of it. And I'll come back to it in a moment. But I want to pull it up just so I have it here to return to. I wasn't even going to go here, but I think it's necessary. So we'll get to that one in a second. But yeah, in terms of race, class, sex, and gender, what we tend to notice most is that Black men tend to be kind of eliminated from reflection. So there's too much going on with this thing. All right, there we go. All right, so while employers are calling the current labor conditions in the U.S. a shortage as they struggle to hire Black men of working age. I apologize about the sound on that one, y'all. But much appreciated for the support, Ray. Let's see. Black men of working age continue to have the highest unemployment rate of any gender or race. It's been that way for the past 2 decades throughout job market ups and downs. Experiments on hiring discrimination stretching back to the 1970s shows it happens from entry-level positions to jobs requiring a college degree. S. Michael Gaddis, a UCLA sociologist who studies employment discrimination, told Insider. All right. Let's see. What's up, Christopher? Good to see you in here. Ian, much appreciated as usual for dropping that info. Thanks a lot. Appreciate the support. Black job seekers face discrimination even when they have an elite college degree, such as one from Harvard or Stanford, Gaddis said. The CEPR study found that although there are other groups that typically face high unemployment and labor market discrimination, such as Black women and other genders of color, those groups tend to rebound depending on the job's climate, while Black men do not. Austin found that when the labor market is tight, for instance, Black women's employment to population ratio becomes very similar to that of white women. Yeah, interesting kind of note. What's up, Jay? Good to see you. Interesting kind of note about the way intersectionality works, right? Again, we come back to heterosexual Black men, and what do we find? And I think I need to restate that line because I think a lot of people dance over it. Austin found that when the labor market is tight, for instance, Black women's employment to population ratio becomes very similar to that of white women. So his work is actually is complementary to James Sedanius's work in terms of that. So he's looking at it empirically, and he's finding that white women actually have more in common with Black women have more in common with white women in terms of unemployment, especially when things are tight, than they do with Black men. All right. So it says criminal justice and Black employment are inextricably linked. One major reason for Black men not working is that many of them are incarcerated or die at a young age. Even before the pandemic, Black people saw roughly 74,000 more deaths than their white counterparts between 2016 and 2018, right? Even before the pandemic, right? According to a report last February, for reasons like greater infant mortality, environmental damage to Black communities, and lower quality health care, in an examination of the 30 largest U.S. cities, despite the fact that they make up much less of the country's population. Much appreciation, Rashid, for that support. Thank you. So that's interesting, right? So again, before the pandemic, from 2016 to 2018, we find that Black folks are dying more due to infant mortality, environmental damage to Black communities, and lower quality health care. Now, I can speak on infant mortality directly and tell you that Black male infants tend to suffer to greater degrees, die at greater degrees than their female counterparts. And again, the comparison is not about denouncing Black women or girls. It's about highlighting that many of the issues we frame as Black are actually Black male issues. Because when you actually get into the numbers and disaggregate it by gender, you find that the males are generally suffering, depending on the metric and depending on the issue, far more. So I question what issues we leave at the label Black and don't go further. But infant mortality, environmental damage, and lower quality health care. I can definitely say from infant mortality to lower quality health care, Black males tend to suffer more in terms of actual mortality. They generally do. All right. A Brookings Institute study from last March found that incarcerated Black men account for a third of all Black men excluded from the labor force. True. And let me back up and say one other thing. This paragraph here that starts with even before the pandemic is key because it's basically saying before the pandemic, we know Black folk are dying in greater numbers than whites. I'm telling you, two of the three issues that he laid out here are definitely Black male issues. But by the time you get to the pandemic itself, Black folks are dying at a higher rate, but Black males that much more so. You guys know I've talked about this before. Black women are dying 4 times the amount of white men. Black men are dying 6 times the amount. So that being said, again, we're looking at issues that impact Black men differently, but very, little of the time are we actually calling it out. You'll see people talk about incarceration all the time, and that's good. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but there's so many more issues that Black males are grappling with that don't make the discussion that it concerns me, right? Let me see. Okay, looking at a statistic like imprisonment for drug use reveals the disparity. Black and white people use drugs at similar rates, according to the National Survey of Drug Use and Health. Yet the former are criminalized for it at much higher rates. Black people, who only represent 13% of the U.S. population, account for nearly 40% of those incarcerated for drug law violations. Indeed. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, Black Americans are also getting sick and dying at higher rates due to the pandemic's exacerbation of existing health inequalities. But despite the prevalence of vaccines and apparent market recovery, recent reports show that Black Americans continue to see higher rates of joblessness. The CEPR's report shows there's a wide pool of Black Americans to hire. It's the self-evident discrimination in the labor market revealing itself. Dr. William Spriggs, an economics professor at Howard University, And the chief economist for the AFL-CIO told Insider in September. He added, the numbers this time are just startling. All right. And that's where that piece particularly ends. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is because the other night I was up, I was watching a movie, or rather, I should say, a movie was watching me, and I was starting to fade. Come on, what's going on? All right. Shout out to Lloyd. Appreciate that Cash App support. And this thing is tripping. Come on, damn it. Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to acknowledge people, but everything's moving slow. Okay. Anyway. But so TV's watching me. And as I'm sitting there, I noticed that something else kind of jumped on the screen that I didn't expect to happen. Let me see if I can find it. No. Is that it? That is it. That is it. So let me pull myself out of it. And you guys can watch this 30-second clip of what it is we're seeing. Here we go. Let's see if I hope you guys can hear it.
As a Black woman in country music, so many people tried to change who I was. At a certain point, I realized that I was running away from everything that makes me different. So I started writing my version of country music from my perspective. Supporting Black women in country music means giving them opportunities, opening that door in front of the camera and behind the scenes. That is how you see change. If you can see her, you can be her.
So hold on. So here's what that was if you missed it. It's a new campaign to kind of lift the representation of Black women in country music. So I just read to you a report on Black men and unemployment, right? And that's not even including those who aren't even looking for jobs. Just even those who really are struggling. They still don't want to talk about Black male homelessness rates, and we know they were extremely high again before the pandemic. But we got time to help Black women in country music. Are you fucking? This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You know, this is what I mean. This is where the priority is. Representation in country music. You got cats out here struggling, and they're doing everything they can. And so part of the reason I call this, the need for a new type of brotherhood is we actually got to find a new way to support each other. Come on, this thing is. Ah, man. Sorry, y'all. Getting used to a new setup. Kave, appreciate that support. We need a new brotherhood. We need a brotherhood that instead of limiting much of our interaction to competition, actually can reinforce and support one another. Because at the end of the day, as we've said plenty of times, ain't nobody coming for us, man. Nobody. So if you know about a position that's available, if you have some game you can give somebody on how they can actually improve their situation, especially if you apply it to what their skill set is. You know what I mean? Don't tell somebody who's out on the street to start, a I don't know, a freaking they call it Bitcoin, empire, and this cat is actually begging for change. If we can actually give each other resources, information, support one another based on where someone actually is and what they can do to navigate where they are, it's incredibly important. It's incredibly important because nobody else is really doing that. Nobody else is really doing it. And I'm going to show you another piece that highlights how specific these issues are because they don't limit themselves to just Black men. That's a little too general. All right. Okay, so my system wants to play around. Trying to get a particular report up. and it is not cooperating. All right, come on now. This thing is looking at me. Should be right here. There it is. All right. So I was talking earlier about, the whole issue with what is this? Intersectionality. Appreciate that, Brian. Thanks for the support. I know I'm a little all over the place. I'm just trying to do this a little differently than I normally do. I thought I'd test it out live straight on YouTube as opposed to using some of the other programs I use. And I'm a little rusty doing it this way. So I apologize. Anyway, so this is an interesting piece that lets you know how specific our conditions are, right? This is a piece you can find in psmag.com, right? The high salary trifecta, gay, black, and male, right? Subtitle: a new study suggests a surprising combination of factors could lead to the best pay. Let me enlarge this a little bit, if it will. There we go. All right. Okay. So this one here reads, sociologists are quite familiar, and this is a 2015 piece, by the way. Sociologists are quite familiar with the combination of marginalized identities that can lead to oppression, inequalities, and double disadvantages. But can negative stereotypes actually have positive consequences? Financial Juneteenth recently highlighted a study showing that gay black men may have better odds of landing a job and excuse me, landing a job and higher salaries than their straight black male colleagues. Damn it. Wow, that was weird. Led by sociologist. Appreciate that support, Grinch. Hope you're well. Led by sociologist David Padula, the data come from resumes and a job description evaluated by 231 white individuals selected in a national probability sample. The experiment asked them to suggest starting salaries for the position and answer questions about the fictional prospective employee. To suggest race and sexual orientation, resumes included typically raced names, either Brad Miller or Darnell Jackson, and listed participation in Gay Student Advisory Council half the time. Okay. Padula found that straight black men were more likely to be perceived as threatening, as measured with answers as to whether the respondent thought the applicant was likely to break workplace rules, make female co-workers feel uncomfortable, or steal from the workplace. In contrast, gay black men were considered by far the least threatening. Gay black men were also judged to be the most feminine, followed by gay white men. Perhaps most surprisingly, the combination of being gay, black, and male attracted the highest salaries. Gay black men were considered the most valuable employee overall. Straight white men were offered slightly lower salaries, and gay white men and straight black men were offered lower salaries still. So this chart gives a pretty good breakdown, but I think the way I have it on my screen, let me see. Let me see if I can change the dimension so you guys can actually see the whole chart. So again, hold 1 second. All right. It's a little off, but here we go. So if you look at the four columns, right, in terms of this table one, means and standard deviations for dependent and mediating variables by experimental condition, you see three layers: for salary recommendation, threatening factor, perceived femininity, right? And so you have straight white on the left, gay white right next to that, straight black next to that, and gay black on the furthest right. I'm sorry, straight white on the left, gay black on the right, right? You can see the deviation, right? 38,000 for straight white, 33 for gay white, 35 for straight black, 41 for gay black. Threatening factors go up from straight white to gay white to straight black, which is the highest, and of course, gay black being the least, with a negative 0.31. Right. Padula's findings have sparked a conversation among scholars and journalists about the complexity of stereotypes surrounding black masculinities and sexualities. Organizational behavior researcher and Huffington Post contributor John Fitzgerald Gates also weighed in on the findings, arguing that the effeminate stereotypes of homosexuality may be counteracting the traditional stereotypes of a dangerous and threatening black heterosexual masculinity. That's what we're looking at. Right? And this isn't to diss anybody. I'm not, it's not about being derogatory or any of that. What we're looking at empirically is how we understand, right, how the impact of how society functions on black males is unique and very particular across a number of different frameworks, right? And so that said, from the first article dealing with high levels of unemployment despite the needs for employees, to who gets paid based on who's perceived as a threat and who isn't, we find that black males, particularly heterosexual black males, find themselves statistically in the most vulnerable place, right? This is what we're dealing with. And at some point, we got to be a resource to one another because there's nobody else coming. And that's the core of what I wanted to get at. We need to develop a new type of brotherhood because it's not happening like this. And of course, the pandemic just made it worse. So while we're arguing over whether or not it's real, homelessness, unemployment, low pay, even if employed, all these things continue to get worse for black men. Right? There's got to be a point where we shift the narrative. And I think there's potential, especially among the brothers that listen to me, the kind of brothers that I have. I'm not saying it's because of me, but because of the kind of brothers we are, I think it's possible that we can actually change the way in which we interact. Now, competition has its place, don't get me wrong, but there also has to be a space for compassion. And if nobody else is willing to be compassionate to black men, then it falls on black men to learn how to be compassionate to one another. Because y'all know what it is. So like I said, this was just going to be a little quick hit. I wanted to just kind of bring some things to your attention. I'm anxious to see your feedback in the comment section. Much appreciation, Robert. Thank you for that support. I'm interested in seeing what we can do because this mess right here, it ain't getting better. Right? There's no immediate policy that I can see on the horizon that targets the very specific nature of our condition and starts to address the issues that lead to even the disparagement between black men and women in terms of performance in society, in terms of access. I mean, when it's such that you can barely find a goddamn article on black male homelessness, but we can find ways to help black female country singers. What? I talked about this last year with COVID, and I challenged my audience to find one program that targeted black male entrepreneurship. Y'all remember when the pandemic started and they started having these conversations about supporting entrepreneurial mom and pop businesses and making sure even black businesses thrive. But you saw all these specific programs targeted at black women. Not one, not one did we find targeted at black males. And one brother challenged me and he said he did find one, but when we looked at the origins of it, it was 3 years old. So it was already in place before the pandemic. But since the pandemic, we didn't find not one. And now they're going to such great lengths that they're even looking to help black women country singers. All 5 of them. And how many cats we got out of here homeless? Broke? I'm hearing about. Appreciate that support, Great I9. I'm hearing about one of the worst storms that we've seen in particular parts of the country right now. No conversation whatsoever about what's going on with black men. So again, fellas, I wasn't going to keep you this long. I thought I'd just pop up here and do a quick live because this was on my mind. And as I'm sitting there about to fall asleep watching The Fugitive on TV, drifting in and out, this commercial pops up and I'm like, what in the entire fuck is going on? I posted it on Instagram because I was just literally, lit. And of course, the blowback, really wasn't what I wanted it to be. But either way, we got to step this up. So again, I'm anxious to hear what you guys got to say. I hope you guys are well. And, I look forward to the dialogue. Appreciate that support, Barry. Thank you. Y'all take it easy.